it's 2 months down the road and we still haven't been paid yet. So they kind of drug us out to almost 100, 120 days. We had probably $10,000 or $15,000 in materials on that job, and I'm out all that out of pocket. I mean, all the materials and everything to go into it, and we don't see that money for almost 4 months. So I bugged them every week, it seemed like.
It's another Wednesday and another episode of the Skid Steer Nation podcast. Today, we're going to dive into the inspiring story of Chandler Creech, who pivoted from being laid off due to COVID to launching a full-time excavation company. We're going to explore how he navigated this transition, the challenges and the triumphs of starting his business from scratch, and what it means to commit to your vision in the face of adversity. So stay tuned to listen to his journey about determination, learning, and success. And I just want to take a second before I introduce Chandler to remind all of you that the Skid Steer Nation podcast is brought to you by none other than skidsteernation.com. It's your home for high-quality American-made skid steer attachments. We partner with some amazing family-owned manufacturers that put quality over profits every day of the week and have wonderful customer service. So if you're out there trying to earn a buck with your equipment, you need reliable, dependable equipment. You need the right tools so you can work efficiently and quickly. Head over to skidsteernation.com and find your next attachment. Chandler, welcome to the show.
How's it going, man? I appreciate having me on.
Yeah, we were just talking before we started that we just interviewed a gentleman named Cole Morse not too long ago. And during our conversation, he was like, you got to meet my buddy Chandler.
He shot me a text. He's like, hey, man, I just did an interview on Skid Steer Nation. He's like, I gave him your name and gave him your info. He said, hopefully they reach out to you. So I appreciate getting a hold of me, man.
Yeah, we jumped right on that. So whenever a guest recommends another story, I mean, there's got to be something to it, right? So
right, absolutely.
And I felt like a kindred spirit when I was reading through your notes, because Skid Steer Nation is here literally because of COVID.
Is that right?
Yep. So I was, I had a lot of years of entrepreneurship in my 20s and 30s, but I was actually working as like a vice president of business development and sales for a machining and engineering company that worked with OEMs like Caterpillar, John Deere. Right. And when COVID hit, they did a top-down layoff. So like my buddy that owned the business is like, man, I hate to do this. And I'm like, it's all good, man. I get it.
See,
like this is some weird times.
Tell you how many, I can't tell you how many people I've heard of that happened to. My mom, actually, she was a social worker for 30 years and then got laid off. Now she's a real estate agent, which she's doing awesome. But I was a project manager, safety manager for a big demolition company. And I was the youngest one there, and COVID hit and they started kind of downsizing the department I was in. So I was like, well, I've got a lot of family that farms and been around equipment, had a fascination with it my whole life. I'm like, well, I've wanted to do this for a while. So what better time to dive head first into it, right?
Amen, man. Amen. Yeah. I remember sitting there. I took a week because the world was crazy.
Right.
And after about a week, I'm like, all right, what are we going to do? And I just sat down and I'm like, I'm going to own a business again because nobody's ever going to tell me when I can and cannot make money again.
Yep, exactly.
I want a business that can generate revenue 24 hours a day. Yep. I want to be able to work wherever there's a Wi-Fi signal. I don't want to be tied to a 9-to-5 or a brick and mortar store. Mm-hmm. And through that process, I just was like, well, it has to be something online because that's the only way I knew how to make money 24/7 and be able to work from wherever.
And it seems like everything's transitioned into that too.
Yeah. And then you say, what are you good at? What skills can you provide the world if you're going to go that route? And my experience in skid steer attachments just was a perfect fit. So
we
launched Skid Steer Nation, and technically I launched it in April of 2020, but I will tell you, I did a lot of trout fishing, a lot of afternoon cocktails, and not a lot of work until August. And then I'm like,
enjoy yourself while you can, right?
Like the whole world was shut down, right? So nobody was yelling at me for doing nothing.
Exactly.
But after a few months, I'm like, okay, this is not the lifestyle I want. And
right.
Slowly,
you get too much time on your hands, you get in trouble real quick.
Yeah, we had to put a limit there, like during COVID that summer, like no cocktails before 5, and because you get up at 7 a.m, you go for a run or a workout, and by 8:39, you're like, what do we do today? Because you weren't leaving the house. There's nowhere to go.
You got the whole rest of the day to basically do whatever the hell you want. Sometimes that's a little dangerous.
It was like, it got to the point where after lunch, you're like, well, I might as well make a cocktail. Like nothing else to do today.
Absolutely. I know how that goes.
And then I'm like, well, this has got to stop too. So then we put 5 p.m. as a limit. And then slowly after that, you got back to normal. But
I saw a statistic online that said something about the percentage of people that started drinking more heavily during COVID, and I can say I played a part in that myself, but it was unbelievable. It seemed like before COVID, obviously people drink and stuff, but you get X amount of hours of just free time where you have nothing to do on your hands. It's like, well, as an adult, I'm going to get back and enjoy myself a little bit.
It didn't hurt that it was spring and summer either, right? Like you can be outside, you can enjoy it.
Well, that weather makes me want to drink. Anyways, I got home from work yesterday and fired up the grill and had some steaks on the grill. I'm like, might as well just open up a beer. I mean, this weather makes you want to drink anyways, right?
Yeah. Especially the transition weather. We're both Midwest boys. I'm just next door in Illinois.
Okay,
so,
gotcha.
We've been sitting through winter and hibernating, and now the sun's out at 60 degrees. You think we're in Florida when it's 90. It's
exactly
shirtless and Bermuda shorts, and they were like, "What are you doing? It's 60 degrees out."
I'm not used to this, man.
It's not negative 20. We're happy.
That's right. Exactly.
So, oh man,
that's funny.
Yeah. So you just went out and just bought a skid steer, then, right? Like,
I did. So I worked basically for, I'd say, a year, maybe a little over a year, where I was renting equipment and just wanted to make sure I actually wanted to do that full time and something that I could find work, obviously. And so yeah, I worked for found jobs for, I'd say, a year, a little over a year, and then I was like, all right, I'd spend more money in rentals than I would just paying on a machine. So I went out and purchased a Cat 259D, and I was kind of hesitant on it at first just because I was kind of scared that I wouldn't be able to keep it busy, which I had work coming in, but you never know. You go pull a big loan like that, and it's always kind of gives you a pit in your stomach. So I pulled that loan, and to be honest with you, I haven't looked back since. So it was a good purchase, and we actually just purchased a 304, which is a mini, last year, and it seems like I have them almost on every single job together. So
that's awesome.
Have a look back. Absolutely.
That's awesome. And then you talked about, and I don't even know the details of it. You didn't tell me any details, but you said you came out with a bang, and your first project was quite the experience. Yeah.
So I wrote that in the little survey you sent out to us. But so I had a guy, I was actually working for him. He did some contract work here and there, and I started working for him during COVID just to bring some money in. And I ended up working for him, and I was pulling more jobs in, excavation jobs for myself. So his brother-in-law that owned his house actually was asking me about some drainage work. So I did some drainage work for him, had a rental mini, and I ended up digging a trench and got most of the trench dug, and then ran into a big chunk of concrete, basically. So jumped on the other side of the trench and continued to dig the rest of the way. I was like, all right, I got to get this pipe in there somehow. So I went and kind of straddled the trench and was trying to get this big chunk of concrete in, and the left side track just slipped right in the trench. And I'd say it was probably 24 to 30 inch trench. Track slipped in on the mini, and it was a rental piece, and it dented the whole side of the machine. I'm not sure really how I got it out, to be honest with you. I was in a panic mode, just kind of messed with it for like an hour and a half, and got it out and put it back on the trailer, took it back to the rental company, and tried to hide that I kind of damaged it. Didn't want them to see it. Wasn't really going to not pay for it, but didn't really want to point it out. And they ended up noticing it. So I turned it in, got my deposit back, and then I get a call probably 2 or 3 hours later. I'm like, oh, goodness, this can't be good. So they noticed the damage, and we kind of went back and forth. So I ended up only making probably $200 on the first job I ever did. $800 in damage. I think it was $1,000 or $1,200 job, and ended up kind of, I don't know, getting into it with kind of a scare tactic, I guess. But it kind of taught me a big lesson, to be honest with you, and I don't know. I kind of use it as like a learning experience now anything can happen. And I don't know. It was definitely a shocker. I'm like, is this really what I want to do?
Well, I'll be honest. The first thought that crossed my mind was, how the hell is a safety project manager for a demo company getting a mini X that close to a trench?
Yeah, it was not an ideal situation, to be honest with you, but not something I'm real proud of, but I figured it'd be something good to talk about.
Absolutely, man. Well, we all learn from our mistakes. Nobody learns from the successes. And we talk about that
Absolutely.
All the time. I mean,
Absolutely.
I can't tell you the details of a perfect day, but I can tell you what I was doing every minute of a bad day.
Exactly. And then you go into a job and you kind of have a game plan, and I'm one, I overthink shit as is, or overthink stuff as is. And it drives me nuts. Come up with a game plan, and try to think of every single scenario. And it never goes as planned. I mean, you think you got a game plan in mind, and it never goes that way. And I think in excavation, almost more so than a lot of industries, it's just you're always running into something. I mean, whether it's a breakdown or you're running into utility or bad working conditions. I mean, it's just there's so many variables that go into each job, and it's
especially if you're digging because you don't have any idea what's under the grass.
You're exactly right. And it's even you can have the property marked and you'll run into utilities from a previous house or previous structure that was there. And yeah, it's definitely a guessing game sometimes, but keeps you on your toes.
It does keep you on your toes, man. Yes, it does. So do you do a lot of demo with your background, or do you try to avoid that type of work?
I still do some demo, to be honest with you. We did, I'd say 2 or 3 mobile home demos last year. And I did a house and a trailer, or a house and a garage demo, and kind of cleaned up a property. I enjoyed doing it, but the company I work for, they're a really large scale company. We were doing power plants and hospitals and stuff like that. So it was on a much larger scale, but still all the same concepts and stuff like that. But I really enjoyed demo. Sometimes demo is a little bit easier because you're not worried about messing something up unless it's the equipment. So you kind of go into it and it's a little bit more laxed, and I really enjoy it. But yeah, I don't get too many calls for demos, but definitely enjoy it when I do, for sure.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, when I owned bars and nightclubs, that was my favorite part of remodeling, was the demo day.
Right. Absolutely.
The sad part is it takes you 3% of the time. You're like, oh, it was awesome. We got the first phase done. And then you're like, oh, it's got 6 more months to go until
exactly. That's
everything
just the
else
beginning of it, right?
Yeah. Swinging the sledgehammer is always fun.
Yeah, relieving a little bit of stress and kind of breaking loose for a little bit. And then the game plan comes together and you're like, all right, now we got to take this a little bit more serious.
Yeah. Yeah. So you rent for a while, which I think is very wise. I recommend that to anyone starting out. Make sure you can validate your market, your services.
Exactly.
And when you don't have any expenses, the cost of rental isn't killing you.
Well, that makes it nice. And I mean, even to this day, we've got a pretty big pond project coming up, and we still rent full-size equipment. And I tell everybody it's easy when they drop off the equipment. I mean, you've already got a number you're going to pay for. So you pay for this amount, X amount of days, and they take care of the maintenance, the upkeep, I mean, the pickup and drop off. And sometimes it makes it nice. I mean, it'd be hard to own a full-size piece of equipment and range delivery. And I mean, it's expensive for freight nowadays too. So, I mean, it's almost cheaper and easier sometimes just to rent full-size stuff. I mean, it's nice to have smaller equipment, but I mean, sometimes you get into that full-size equipment, you're spending a couple $1,000s just to get to the job site. So it's outrageous, and you got to account for all that. So
yeah. And then you get the insurance, maintenance, so you talked about, and
exactly.
all that. And what if it doesn't work? What if you're not using it for 15 of the 20 working days that month because you're on different projects?
You're exactly right. I tell everybody those payments don't go away.
Yeah. Just because I didn't turn the ignition on doesn't mean the bank cares.
Exactly. They want their money no matter what.
Yeah. And they're going to get it.
Mm-hmm. One way or another.
They're going to get it.
Yes,
so have you kind of found a niche that you like to do, or you seem to get more phone calls for, or do you still just doing a bunch of general services?
I do. It seems like a little bit of everything. We do a lot of site work. So working with builders, doing site prep and cutting in driveways, utilities, building pads and stuff like that. But I've kind of got steered into doing a little bit of concrete work. We do, I mean, just a little bit of everything, whatever comes toward us. I've always been the one, when I first started, I would kind of take on a little bit of everything, and it made us pretty well rounded. I mean, sometimes you get into it where it's almost like you're learning while you're doing the job, which is, I don't know, not always the best scenario, but we've always been able to work through it. And it's hard to turn down work. You know what I mean? When work's coming in, and the market's so saturated nowadays where there's just so many contractors that want to do excavation. And it seems like I tell everybody, anybody with a pickup and a shovel seems like they can do excavation work. And it's just, there's so much more to it than that. You know what I mean?
There really is.
Yeah.
What was the biggest learning curve for you that first year, 18 months?
I would say learning how to operate as a business and just communicate with the customer, time management with jobs. And one of the biggest things I think I don't struggle with, but one of the hardest things in this industry is bidding work, I think. And because you got one guy that can come in at $800, and then you've got another guy that'll come in at $5,700. And I try to be right there in the middle, be fair, but you still got to make money and survive. But it's hard to compete in the market where there's, a couple $1,000, or sometimes you got $10,000-$20,000 of difference in price. And I don't know, it's just hard to put a good number on it where the customer's happy, you're happy, and you're still bringing in work. And I don't know, it seems like we're always kind of tweaking a little bit. You got too much work, you need to raise your prices a little bit, but you don't have enough work, you need to bring them down a little bit. So it's hard to find that happy medium, to be honest with you. But
yeah, I'm a big proponent of figuring out how to create estimates that really highlights all the value that you provide.
Right.
And being very descriptive with the services, the steps, the pre-planning, the after walkthrough, any guarantees and everything else. And what happens is, and what you notice is that when you get really detailed on the estimates, the number at the bottom doesn't seem as big. One.
Right.
And then two, when you have an $800 bid to a $2,500 bid, if this just says excavation work, $800, and this one has all the details, all the guarantee, the cleanup, and you're like, well, at least I know what I'm getting with this one. There's a lot of question marks.
You're exactly right.
So it creates an apples to oranges comparison.
You're exactly right. And I think being transparent about that is huge. And that's one of my strong suits, I think, is just communication with the customer, letting them know what they're getting and what they're paying for. Everybody, I don't care if you're spending $100,000 or $1,000, you want to know what you're paying for. And I've been in a couple of groups on Facebook where they're like, well, just give them one big number, and if you get the job, you get the job. If you don't, you don't. And I've always been one where I break down the prices. If you're paying for materials, you want to know what you're paying for, and you want to know how many hours of labor is going into it, which everybody does a little bit different, but people want to know what they're paying for. And you've got to be transparent about, when I send an email over, I break every task down, the scope of work, and try to be as open about that as I can, because people got to know what's going on, or they'll just, they'll question the whole time, and there's going to be issues, I think. But
I agree with you, and I love that you break it down. I would challenge you they don't care how many hours it takes you, and they don't care about the material.
Right.
They care about getting their problem solved.
Yeah.
So I'm still a big proponent of a big number, but saying, hey, we're going to use this many tons of this rock. Here's why we use this rock for the base. Here's why we use this for the top. We're going to excavate, dig out. They don't need to know it takes you an hour.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you start bidding by the hour, you might as well just go back to work for somebody else. You just got a job with a lot of expenses, is what I always say.
I agree, and that's one thing I've done a lot of research and looked up a lot of YouTube videos and stuff, just pricing, and I've kind of got a system down to it now. But there's just different ways. You can either price it as a whole, you can do time and materials, you can do hourly, and it all depends on the job. But I try to stay away from hourly as much as I can. And I think time and materials is one that kind of works out more often than not. But yeah, you start to get hourly and people start to nitpick and, you were only here for 2.5 hours. Well, it took me a half hour to unload equipment, and you got to account for all that. You know what I mean? Because it all takes time.
I talked to a guy in Georgia, and Carl, he was telling me that when he would do it by the hour, like at the end of some projects, they'd be like, well, you had lunch in the machine for half an hour. And he's just like, well, that wasn't running the machine for 8 hours, and that's what I'm paying for.
You're exactly right.
I'm like, get away from the hourly stuff, because not every customer is that way, but.
Yeah, it makes it tough. And you kind of know the ones that are going to be nitpicking, the ones that aren't. But yeah, I've seen those situations where you price it by the hour, and then, like we've mentioned before, people want to know what they're paying for. So if they think they're getting 4 hours worth of work, they're not accounting for you driving an hour there, which usually that's not included in my price. You kind of buffer that into the hourly, but accounting for the 20 or 30 minutes it takes to unload equipment. You got to let equipment warm up, fuel it, grease it. There's just so much more than just that 4 hours of work. But yeah, it's tricky for sure, especially in this industry, I think. But
yeah, that's why you got to, you really have to know why the customer's getting the work done. Like, what pain are they feeling?
Yeah. Yep.
And then, so once you know that pain, you can actually use that to sell the deal and highlight it in your estimates, because that's what they want solved. That's what they want solved.
Absolutely. And express what value you're bringing to the table. And and I've listened to a couple of your other podcasts, and I love the fact that you explain what problem you're going to solve, or explain to the contractor, tell them what problem you're going to solve, explain what you're bringing to the table for them, and then it almost sells the job for you sometimes, depending on what the job is. you can either really sell yourself or you really cut yourself short depending on the job. But yeah.
I mean, you think about it, you can go to a restaurant and eat dinner anywhere, but you have a favorite place because partly the atmosphere, but partly the service.
Yes.
And technically what that is the customer experience that you're receiving when you walk in that door.
You're exactly right. You're
Right.
exactly right. I think customer service is one of my biggest things. I mean, it seems more often than not, I build that relationship with the customer where it's almost like, hey, you call me up if you ever need anything small. I mean, you ever need any more work done. It's just, you have to build that relationship because we're in it for the long haul. This is not just go out and do one job and then you're done with that customer forever. I like to build the relationships for, hey, 3 or 4 years down the road, if you need work done or you plan on building a house, give us a call. We're more than willing to help you. And I'll move my schedule around if I need to because we built that relationship. And I think that's huge. I really do.
Yeah. Like when you leave a job site, like your customer should be feeling, I got a guy if I ever need any dirt work or services done. Even if you can't do it, you can recommend who can do it.
You're exactly right. And you build that trust to where, hey, he did good work for us. I trust him and what he has to say and what he does. And so if he recommends somebody, more often than not, they're going to be the same way. So yeah, I think that's a big thing in this industry for sure.
It's huge. Too many contractors, in my opinion, try to make it easy for themselves and not easy for the customer.
Right. And I think I tell my wife all the time, I almost stress myself out enough trying to please the customer and make them as happy as they can because they're the ones that are bringing food to our table. I mean, that's how business works. And I think if you can treat a customer how you would want to be treated if somebody was coming to you for work, I mean, you're always going to have work. And I think that's one thing I mentioned in that list is we haven't really paid for much marketing. And I think it's because of the relationship we build with them and the way we treat the customers. I mean, it's a big part of it for sure.
Yeah. Have you noticed a dip or a drop off in your reach or your responses that you get in like your social media posts and everything?
Yes, to a certain degree. A lot of ours are family and friends, and then just kind of people that follow us and see us around town and stuff like that. But yeah, it's been pretty steady, but it seems like definitely towards the end of the year, it kind of drops off. And then about this time, it starts to pick back up.
Oh, 100%.
The interactions are all the way there where they should be. But yeah.
Yeah. You got any big projects lined up for this year? Things that you're looking forward to doing?
We've got a bigger pond job. We do a lot of smaller residential work. So it seems like every year we get 1 or 2 real big projects that kind of take quite a bit of our time. But we just bid a pretty good sized pond job, basically repairing the dam, expanding the pond quite a bit, and doing some other small stuff here and there. That'll be a pretty good project for us. Probably be on that one for, I'd say, 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a little bit more if customer ends up wanting to do stuff. But I like the 1 week projects where you get in and out. And I don't know, I'm kind of one that I like a change of pace. If I'm on there for too long, it kind of drives me nuts. I'm like, all right, I'm ready to be on to the next one now.
You just got to remind yourself you could be loading and unloading that equipment every day on one-day jobs too. So there's a little silver lining in those longer projects.
I agree. Because that'll wear you out too. For sure.
They sure will. They just a lot of movement, a lot of wasted movement.
Is. Yes. And it's a lot of work. I mean, just to load up equipment and get your chain of binders going. And I mean, it's a lot of work just to get a piece of equipment on a trailer, load it down and move it to the next job site. I mean, it takes a couple hours to do just that. So,
yeah, we got a guy here in town and every time I see him, he's at the skid steer on the trailer behind the truck. I'm like, I'm like, are you that busy? He's like, no, I just don't ever take it off. He's like, it's easier. And he's like, and I can use it for marketing. I'm like, your gas mileage has to suck.
Yeah. Honest, you're paying for that one way or another.
I was like, oh, you're probably cheaper getting a billboard.
Like, yeah, no kidding. Yeah, you can just tie one to the back of your trailer or something.
Firm believer, just leave it on the truck and you'll get phone calls. Funny. I'm like, well,
just
it works for you. Keep doing it. Yeah,
exactly.
Keep doing it if it works for you, man.
You got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah. And speaking of transitions, you've had a baby less than a month ago or right at a month ago?
Yes, I did. So she was born, her due date was on Valentine's Day, and she was actually born on February 9th.
Okay.
So that kind of changed things a little bit for us. But the house I'm in now, we just finished remodeling this one. My wife's actually a real estate agent. So we were living out of our camper for 2 years, and our big plan was to buy land and build a house. And we thought we had it all figured out, and she got pregnant. So that kind of put a huge changing things and kind of changed the course of everything. So we bought this house, and it's got a nice shop. We're about 1.5 acres or 2 acres, and we actually just finished remodeling all this. I did all the work myself, so we just finished it 2 or 3 weeks before the baby got here. So we were cutting it close, but it's finally finished and finally enjoying it a little bit. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm
man.
excited. We've been wanting a baby for a long time, and my wife wasn't sure if she'd ever be able to get pregnant, and she did. And I was like, all right, it's unbelievable, man. I don't know if you have kids yourself, but it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, no, when my first wife and I, we didn't think we wanted kids. And then when I decided I did, she still didn't, which is probably half the reason it's my first wife.
Right.
My fiance now, we're in our mid 40s now, but like my fiance now, she had the same path as your wife. And
right.
Without that outcome, it was just never in the cards for her. So
yeah, absolutely.
So we just spoil the shit out of the nieces and nephews.
Oh, absolutely, man. That's what I did before this. And our baby's name is actually Miracle. So her middle name is Kholle. And we call it our miracle baby because we were going to get ready to do IVF. And I mean, we tried for 8 to 9 months. And we ended up, my mom said, once you guys stop trying, that's when she's going to get pregnant. So we took 18 pregnancy tests in 1 month. And then the next month, she didn't hardly take any, and all of a sudden she gets pregnant. I'm like, what are the odds?
It's amazing how the world works, isn't it?
It really is.
I have a friend here in town who literally by a physician was told that, having a child is not in your cards.
Oh, wow.
They adopted a baby boy.
Right.
And a year and a half later, she got pregnant.
No kidding.
I mean, I don't know if it's just that like the maternal nature switched when she had a kid in the house, but something happened where she was actually, and it was when she found out she was pregnant, she's like, what?
Right. Well, that's what my wife's got PCOS. So she had a doctor tell her that she'd never be able to have a baby. It's like a fertility issue. And had a doctor tell her she'd never be able to have a baby. And she was like, I was like, all right, well, we're going to try. I said, it's 2024 now. If there's a will, there's a way. Whether we have to pay a little bit of money to do IVF or whatever we have to do. I said, if we want it bad enough, we can make it happen. So,
well, I was going to say, you sound like every young man in America. We're going to try.
That's right. I enjoy practicing.
Yeah. Well, oh shucks, we'll do it again tomorrow.
That's right. Exactly. We can keep trying for as long as we need to.
Keep trying.
That's right. It's the biggest blessing, man. My wife says that we were planning on having a boy just with excavation and stuff like that. I mean, feel like every guy wants to just have a little boy around, but I was almost more excited to have a girl. And my wife said, well, hopefully it softens you up around the edges a little bit. Man, she has me wrapped around her finger already.
We joke about that with me. I'm like, if I would have been a parent, I would have hoped to God it was a boy, because if it would have been a girl, she would have just ran wild. I'm like, okay.
Exactly. It definitely changes things for sure. But I mean, I love it. There's nothing like it. I've just started a job this week, our first job back for the year. And I met him for lunch every single day I was on the job. I'm like, I get to the job, work a couple hours. I'm like, all right, I'm ready to be home with my girls now, man. It's hard to be away from them. I spent all winter remodeling the house, and my wife and I, we spend every day together, it seems like. So it's tough to get in the groove of things and get back to wanting to work and not being away from them all the time.
Yeah, that's true, man. That's true. And then when you do start getting busy, you're going to be like, we really got to stay busy so we can keep providing the life for
exactly
the girls.
That's a big thing, I'm telling you, because as you know, babies aren't cheap.
No. Yeah. And I was just a guest on a podcast for a local show yesterday. And there's talking about like the depth of your commitment to reach your goals.
Right.
And I'm a firm believer that when you can set your goals around your family and around other people, you're unstoppable.
That's to be honest with you, I really don't think I would have been able to do this without my wife. I mean, she's definitely my biggest supporter, and it seems like I'm not really conservative, but I'm not one to go and take huge risks. I mean, I'll take a little bit of risk here and there, but my dad and grandpa were always the way where you got to question everything. You got to know why you're doing it and the reason behind it. And if you don't have a real good reason, then there's probably a reason not to do it. So I'll go into something and start questioning something like, well, I don't know if I need to do that. She'll push me to do it. And it seems like every time it works out, and she's always there to kind of ride me and push me to reach my potential. And she's definitely one of the biggest reasons I've been able to do this, to be honest with you. So,
they say that for a reason, man. Behind every successful man's a strong woman, because
I couldn't agree more.
They got to push us.
Exactly. I mean, having a good woman in your life and having just some structure in your life. I mean, it's a game changer for sure.
Yeah, it is. And I'm sure your structure's out the window now with a month-old baby.
It threw everything for a loop. Absolutely. We were always on a schedule, wake up, work out in the morning, and then during the winter, go look at jobs and stuff. But now our schedule is fly by the seat of your pants, and it's all over the place now. But I wouldn't change it for the world.
That's awesome, man. Fantastic. We should probably get back on topic of excavation and business ownership, since that's what most people tune in to listen to.
Right.
Not what's a great babysitting tip for the day, but
not that I have any good ones, but
yeah. Just throw it in the air and see what sticks and roll with it, right?
That's right.
Oh man. I was gonna say, are you more focused on residential work than commercial work? I get a feeling you are. You've had a few bad experiences commercially.
Yeah, I do mostly, probably 95% residential work, which I enjoy. Like I said earlier, it's kind of get in and get out. We've done a couple commercial jobs. We did it was like a 20 or 30,000 square foot parking pad, I think. Let me see. Probably 30 or 40,000, I would say, would be a little bit more accurate. But we did one of those for a big manufacturing plant, and I don't know, and we also did another commercial job last year for it was a manufacturing plant expansion, and we were a sub under a GC. And it seems like on both of those, payment was kind of an issue. We get paid right away before I leave the job site on most residential jobs. Excuse me. And it seems like on commercial jobs, it's either net 60, net 90, and sometimes they drag it out even farther than that. So the last one we did, the girl that reached out to me, I think she was a project manager. She said, yeah, it was a last minute deal where we agreed to. And she said, yeah, we'll get you paid within 30 days after completion. No issues at all. They were going to kind of help us cover materials, which wasn't a huge deal at all. And so we finished the job. I sent him an invoice and I said, are we still good to go on 30 days? She kind of agreed and confirmed that. And we're 2 months down the road, and he's still kind of giving me the runaround, which I was dealing with the owner at the time. They're a pretty big outfit. He was still kind of giving me the runaround. I said, well, when we went into this, we signed a contract that was net 30, which was 30 days after we had completed and sent an invoice, and we didn't get paid. It's 2 months down the road, and we still haven't been paid yet. So they kind of drug us out to almost 100, 120 days, and they finally ended up paying us. But I'm a big one on money. We complete jobs. We had probably $10,000 or $15,000 in materials on that job, and I'm out all that out of pocket. I mean, all the materials and everything to go into it, and we don't see that money for almost 4 months. So I bugged them every week, it seemed like, but they finally ended up paying us. But it's hard for a small outfit to be out $10,000 or $15,000 in materials, still operate on the day to day, and you're not getting paid. I mean, I really didn't know when I was going to get paid, to be honest with you. I'm not one where I don't like taking the legal side. That's something I try to avoid at all costs. I don't want to get an attorney, and it just costs money. You know what I mean? And I don't think anybody wants to get into that. So it was like, hey, if you don't pay us within X amount of days from when I talked to you last, we're going to have to take things into our own hands. And luckily, he kind of stood up a little bit, and he's like, all right, we'll get you taken care of. And they ended up paying us within like a week and a half of that. But it starts to get worrisome after a while. It's like, really? I mean, I don't have to put a number on the job, but it's a big chunk of money for a small outfit. You know what I mean? And it kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. And I'll still do a little bit of commercial here and there, but it's just, I don't know. We got to be on the same terms when it comes to payment, I guess. And even with a contract, it kind of, yeah. I don't know. I don't like playing the back and forth game, but
a lot of guys I talk to that do commercial work, they have learned over time because of experiences similar to that, you know,
right.
There's different variations of how you do it, right? Material billing up front.
Yep.
Breaking out the project into phases so you can invoice at individual phase periods.
Right.
And where there's a will, there's a way, if that's the kind of work you want to do.
Exactly. And I think some people do it in installments where you'll kind of every so often you get payment and stuff like that, which helps cover materials. But it was kind of a last minute job. We agreed to it to help him out, get him out of a sticky situation. And then it came and backfired on me. I'm like, this shouldn't be the way it goes, but you live and you learn, I guess. Right.
Yeah, that's true, man. That's true.
Yep.
I had a transition that I wanted to talk to you about from there too. It's gone.
Happens to me all too often.
On my A game today, man. Let's see. Commercial projects versus residential billing. I don't even know where. Yeah, no clue where it went.
Hamster fell off the wheel.
It's just completely off the wheel. I think I'm still laughing and getting a kick out of our conversation with the kids and the way it affects your life and everything. So.
Absolutely. It changes things for sure. For
sure.
Oh,
I know what it was now. Here it is. So in addition to like focusing more or having a focus on residential work over commercial work, you're also, and I kind of like this, but you're kind of going backwards as far as scale goes, where you've had some employees and you've been going down that route. And now you're actually scaling backwards to go back to like a solo operator owner.
Yes. And I think having a baby played a big part in that, to be honest with you. I'm really, really family oriented. And I've had a couple guys full-time work for me. And it's hard to, in this line of work, I tell everybody, it's hard to work 5 days a week, 40 hours a day, unless you're a big outfit. I mean, I spend days bidding jobs. you've got to move equipment to the job. You've got to pick up materials. And for a while, I did it by myself. I was a one-man show. I went and did the job. And I'm the type, I want to be on every single job site. I want to speak with the customer and make sure I know exactly what's going on and the customer's getting exactly what they want. I'm kind of a stickler on things, so I want to be there and make sure things are going the way they should be. But I kind of, after having a baby, it kind of made me realize we can live comfortably. I've got everything I want. I'm pretty happy with my setup right now. Don't really want to grow into a huge outfit. I mean, we kind of got that taste with having a couple full-time guys working for us. And it's just, sometimes it's more hassle than it's even worth, to be honest with you. I mean, you're really not making much more money. If not, I might even make more money by myself, I think, to be honest with you. But I always thought maybe I wanted this big company and I wanted to expand and grow real quick. And after kind of seeing that and getting a little taste of it, it's like, well, sometimes I lose sleep at night trying to keep track of my guys, keep them busy every single day, make sure I've got work for them every single week. And now by myself, I mean, shoot, I could take off 2 weeks. I'd be just fine. I mean, I can kind of schedule work when I want and do things at my own pace. And I think I enjoy that more. I was getting to the point where I was almost burning myself out. And my wife was like, listen, we kind of need to touch base, see where we're at with things. Are you happy? Are you where you want to be? And I really wasn't at the time. We were just we were burning it out. We were doing work. And I mean, we had a bunch of work flowing in. Everything was fine. Bills were paid and everything. But it's just keeping that going is a lot of work. It's a full-time job within itself, trying to keep that operation going every day. And it's tough at times.
It's really very tough. Yeah, it's very tough. And don't let anyone tell you you're doing it wrong, because I'm a firm believer that success is reaching your goals.
Exactly.
And I know a lot of people that are solo operators that make, I mean, shit, I know people making 300 grand, 400 grand a year as a solo operator.
Yep. I mean, we were pushing almost 400, 500,000 last year. And I did half of it by myself. So we paid.
Oh no, I'm talking about their take home after expenses.
Gotcha. See,
like they find their niche, they find their lane, they figure out their pricing.
Right.
And then you can just repeat it so quickly. I mean,
right. Absolutely. And it's an easy, in this excavation, you can make a lot of money and you don't have to be a huge outfit. And to be honest with you, by the time you pay employees, pay for your monthly expenses and stuff like that. I mean, you look back, you're like, I was making more money on my own anyways. And it's a tough to find the happy place, but I enjoy running equipment and I enjoy bidding the jobs and talking with the customers and stuff. And it kind of takes the fun out of it once you got people dependent on you and you got to keep that day-to-day operation going. Like I said, it was kind of taking the fun out of it for me, to be honest with you, and kind of back to where I want to be right now.
Yeah, we just interviewed a guy a few weeks ago, and he exited a plumbing and HVAC business that he had built from scratch he was doing a lot of millions of dollars in business. So I can't imagine what the multiplier was that he made. He had 30 employees. He now owns because he's a plumber, he went into like the septic industry.
Right.
That's the one niche that I think you need an employee in. He's running the whole thing as a solo operator, man. He's like, I get in and out. Kidding. I set it myself. I love it. Wow. He's like, I absolutely love it.
That's impressive too. Cause septics are definitely something you definitely need another hand on more often than not.
Man, he's cranking them out as a solo, man.
That's impressive. Yeah. I've pushed my limits quite a bit on jobs. I mean, sometimes I'm like, I definitely need an extra hand, which when I was first starting, I mean, my wife would jump in there and she'd give me a hand. I mean, we built numerous retaining walls together and she's a badass, to be honest with you. But I've pushed my limits, and it makes you realize how much you're really capable of. Because some of these jobs I get on, I'm like, there's no way I can do this all by myself. And start to finish, I've done it from the ground up, and it's like, well, maybe that was possible.
Yeah. It is. You just got to slow down. Like, don't get so focused on the end time, and just slow is smooth is fast. Stay steady, and it'll be done.
Exactly. And that's the hard thing about having employees. You always feel like you're behind. I feel like I was always in a rush trying to get this job done so we can move on to this job, and meeting his schedule is hard enough. And then trying to keep employees happy and want more hours here and there. And shoot, I'd have them doing maintenance on the equipment and washing the equipment. And like I said, I'm kind of the stickler on things. So I want to know that all the maintenance is done correctly. Nothing got done that shouldn't have got done. And it's hard to keep eyes in all the spots you want to keep them. You know what I mean? And keep track of everything.
I know, man. I know. We're all of our entire team's remote. So adds another layer of complexity to managing. So that's why I'm such a stickler on frameworks and standard operating procedures.
Yes. That's something we were trying to put into place when I had some guys working for me. And like I said, that's a full-time job within itself. And then you try to incorporate all that. And my wife was pregnant. We were remodeling the house. It's like, all right, now you need to take a couple steps back and evaluate where we're at. And I kind of bite off more than I can chew sometimes, and then kind of look back. I'm like, well, maybe I should slow down a little bit.
Yeah. I feel like I found a cheat code this year, though, because I can go use a software like Loom and record a video of me talking about what I want to get done, and actually the websites and whatever we need to do for the back end stuff. Right. Then I can take that transcript of the video and I can run it through ChatGTP, that AI software.
Oh, wow.
And it actually will write out the SOP for me. And then if I need to, I can massage it and change it and all that. But I mean, what used to take hours to make processes, I can now do in minutes.
Oh, wow.
I've gotten pretty good at it. I mean, I do it a lot.
That is awesome. Technology is unbelievable, to be honest with you. And I don't use it to its full potential, but yeah, it's unbelievable. And AI is becoming quite interesting, isn't it?
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I will guarantee you that I use artificial intelligence a minimum of 4 to 5 times a day.
Is that right?
Every day.
That's awesome.
I'm to the point now, Chandler, I'm at the point now where I'll be at the grocery store because I do the grocery shopping.
Right.
And I'm like, and I'll have like 2 or 3 things. I'm like, God, this stuff looks really good. I want that. And I'm like, I don't know how to combine it. And I was like, hey, I have these 3 ingredients. Give me 3 dish recommendations. And it spits out. I'm like, ooh, that one sounds good. And I go pick up whatever I need to make that dish, and I'm off to the races.
No kidding.
I'm actually a little heavily dependent on it. People are like, you're a little much. And I'm like, makes life easier.
If you got it there, you might as well use it to your benefit. I'm kind of old school and black and white to a certain degree, but I think obviously it's not slowing down any. It's not going anywhere. So I think using it to its benefit is only helping you.
Well, there was a guest on Joe Rogan not too long ago. He said that artificial intelligence will reach the same level of thinking as a human by 2029. And Elon Musk commented and says, no, it'll reach the level of a human by the end of 2024. It'll reach the level of humanity by 2029.
Oh, wow. That's pretty wild to wrap your mind around, isn't it?
It's almost scary. Like,
it really is scary. I mean, it's just like cars driving themselves and stuff. I don't know. The reaction times are what scares me. It's like I trust that it could keep itself in the lane and use its turn signal and turn where it needs to. But the reaction time, if somebody's on their phone beside you and they veer over, and I don't know, it kind of scares me, which trial and error is definitely a huge thing. And I don't want to be the one involved in that.
I agree. But on the other side of that coin, I did watch a Tesla fall California, and everybody survived, and the car looked like it was in a fender bender. So
really,
I guess if you're going to have a car that doesn't have good reaction time, like, they're pretty safe.
Right. That's awesome. I've got a couple people I know from high school and stuff.
Shit, Chandler, it sounds like it's built better than that Mini X that you put in the trench.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
That thing crumbled like a can.
Yeah, I think I had more damage just in that little 18-inch trench than. That's funny. Oh, too funny.
Oh, man. That's good stuff.
That is funny. You got to live and learn, right?
Maybe you do. Isn't it? I mean, that's the way of life.
Absolutely.
Get in there and get dirty.
Exactly. I learned the hard way every single time, and it seems like I have since I was younger. And I wouldn't really change it. It kind of frustrates me during the time, but while you're going through it, but I look back, I'm like, well, maybe I needed that. Maybe I needed that. And it kind of puts me in my place and puts me in check a little bit, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% agree. I mean, everyone always says, like God gives you what you need when you need it or what you can handle.
Right.
And then if the people that aren't religious, there's talks like, hey, the universe always balances out.
It does.
So when things really good happen, be prepared because something's going to throw you a curveball.
You're exactly right. You always think you know what's happening or what's coming, and it's never the way you think.
Like, winter's always coming.
Yep, exactly. And on that topic, I think one of the big things my wife and I think has played a huge part in her getting pregnant is faith. And my grandma was a minister growing up, and I've always been around faith and stuff like that. But I picked it up more so the last couple of years, and it's wild to think I always stressed, but when you kind of let that stress go a little bit and kind of push that stress off onto whatever higher power you believe, it's amazing how things work out. I'll start stressing about work not coming in or not having enough money during the winter and this and that. And it's amazing how things work out when you just believe and just keep pushing. And I heard you talk about this on another podcast, and it's unbelievable how things work out. And if you keep that positive mindset and you keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, I think once you fold, nothing's going to work with you. But if you keep pushing and you're trying and you're giving it an effort, I think it's unbelievable. It seems like when I'm picking up the phone, making calls and chasing jobs, and I feel like work's getting slow, it's unbelievable how many calls come in. It's just giving it that little nudge, that showing whoever you're showing that you're putting towards an effort. Exactly.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. You got to have some faith.
You definitely do. You definitely
some
do.
days you need to have
nowadays
a lot of faith.
Yeah, exactly. Just where, I don't know how you feel, but the world's a pretty crazy place now. And I think if you don't have faith, and you'll be depressed and miserable. And there's a lot of people out there like that, and I don't want to be a part of that.
Listen, if you got a little bit of faith and a little bit of work ethic, you're going to be A-okay in this entitled community that's developing. So
yeah, I agree. And it can take you a long way. That's why I'm pretty old school about things. And it drives me nuts. People want to sit on the couch and complain and get on Facebook and complain about everything. And they're pulling a check from whatever government funded assistance they've got. It's like, listen, all of us that are out here busting our butt, not complaining about all this stuff, are the ones that should really be complaining, because we're feeling it more so than you are. I promise.
Yeah. I was just having dinner the other day somewhere, and it's a nicer place. They've the owners are very creative with the menu and the drinks and everything else. But like they've got like a burger that's blended with French onion and mushrooms, and it's like a little different. But it's $19. I mean, it's not cheap.
Oh wow, right.
But then you look at the staff around the building, and I'm like, act like you sell a $19 burger, not that you work at McDonald's. I'm like, I want the experience with the food. Like,
well, you're exactly right. That's half of it. I mean, that's half of what you're paying for, it seems like. But
right. They want to go work for, $15, $16 an hour plus tips, but they want to give McDonald's style effort. And that's the disconnect.
I could talk about that for hours. It's unbelievable. Nowadays, it's so hard for people to find employees that want to fill the position that they're almost taking anybody. And I don't know. You can teach and teach and teach, but you cannot make somebody care. You can tell them everything they need to know and put it right in front of them and hand feed them, but you cannot make them care. You're born with that, I think.
Yeah, and that's why I can't stress enough that you hire for culture and desire, because everything else is teachable.
You're exactly right.
Because if you allow those people with that bad attitude in, they will erode the entire culture of a community, of a company, whatever they're involved in.
I just saw something on TikTok. I mean, it was sometime this week, and it said something about the bad apples. It said it's amazing how negative things are and how one person can ruin a whole crew. And once you get rid of that bad apple, things just start to look up, and the whole outlook on the whole crew and the environment changes completely. And it's amazing that one person, I try to be as positive as I can. Everybody's negative a little bit here and there, but nobody likes a negative person. It ruins the whole outlook and the whole environment, the vibe of everything. And it's amazing how one person and one attitude can change it for everybody. It's just it's unbelievable.
And I'm talking like changing it for 10 people, not for one or two.
Yes, exactly. It affects the whole company or organization or whatever you're a part of. I mean, I cannot stand somebody that just gripes and complains and negative. And we all have got stuff we can complain about, but we don't want to hear about yours. I could sit here and tell you about all the things I've got going on, but you don't want to hear about it. You've got your own stuff to deal with. And I think everybody's in that same position.
I mean, I've got a friend that works for a large corporation and trying to figure out how to word this the right way. Anyway, a transgender person entered his team.
Right.
And like after a week, he's like, if they were as worried about the work they put out as they were all of us using pronouns, we'd be effective as all get out. But now nobody wants to go to work because all we hear about is damn pronouns.
Well, you've got to walk on eggshells around them because you're afraid you're going to hurt their feelings and this, and I could go on about that too. But it's just, it's amazing how one person.
He just started calling her his esteemed colleague instead of whatever pronouns they wanted.
Her calling it.
No, you can't do that. Like you can't do that.
Is that against against
so, but there's
too.
nothing negative about esteemed colleague, and
I agree.
She was pissed about it.
Well, it's like you call them what they want to be called, and then they're not happy about that, and it's some of those people.
I'm not bashing on that. I think people can do whatever you want to do, but again, do you don't force it on us.
I agree. I don't walk around telling people how I feel, and I don't want you walking around telling people how you feel.
I don't walk around telling everybody I know that you're an idiot and you need to start a business, stop building somebody else's dream. Like entrepreneurship's my path.
Exactly. And that's the whole I mean, that's the benefit of having the freedom we have. I mean, it's unbelievable. Anybody can do what they want, and they're starting to try to put restrictions on it, but anybody can do what they want, and you got the whole world ahead of you. So it's awesome.
Yeah. Plenty of space to self-implode along the way.
Exactly. That's not the truth.
Plenty of space. More than enough rope.
Way too much.
Oh man.
That's funny.
There was one thing I wanted to ask you about, because most of the people that I meet, and I mean, excavations is not sexy on social media. Like you might get some people like, oh, cool, that machine looks neat. But most business owners, doesn't matter what they post, how often they post, they just can't crack that 200-300 followers of their business page.
Right.
You know, and I've noticed that you're 3 times that plus in a little area in Indiana. Like what are some tips and tricks that you've used, since you're primarily using that as a marketing avenue on the free end, that's been successful for you that might help other business owners?
To be honest with you, I've got asked a couple times if I have a photographer, and I've got a newer iPhone 15, I believe, that I take pictures and stuff with, and luckily I'm sure I put in that survey, but we've been fortunate that I haven't had to pay for any marketing, and that could go both ways. I think some people think that that's a bad idea and some people think it's good, but I try to just take pictures of all the work that we do, take good angles, make sure. One of my biggest things is cleaning off your camera when you take pictures. My mom, I get onto her all the time about it, but clean off your camera when you take pictures, get back and get some good angles. One thing I do is I kid you not, I probably take 100 to 120 pictures of every job. I'll take all the pictures. It's a pain in the butt to go through them, but I'll take a bunch of pictures, different angles. I'll load the equipment. I'll go take more pictures, come back, take more pictures, but take pictures of the jobs we do. And I'll get home, go through them, find the best ones, put a little bit of an edit on them, cipher through them. The ones I like, I'll post. But just showing people what kind of work we do, which, like I said, I'm a stickler on things, keeping clean edges, making sure the job site's clean and stuff like that. But just to document that and show people exactly what kind of person you are. I think you could go to anybody's business page and I can tell you what kind of person they are based on the pictures they have on their page. And I'm a big one on first impression. So I think if you go on somebody's social media and it's clean, they've got good pictures, well-documented jobs, and taking pictures of the equipment looks clean, I think that speaks volumes about somebody. So that's one thing I'm big on, is just documenting the kind of work you do, taking pictures of your equipment, and I'm a stickler on keeping it clean as well. So when I take pictures of my equipment, I don't want it to look ragged out, and I don't want to say junk, but I don't want it to look like junk. But I think that speaks volumes about that, and it shows the customer what kind of contractor they're hiring. And I think that's a big thing with us, is just quality pictures and quality work. I mean,
yeah, and I agree with 2 points to you, and there's one thing I want to add into that for people that are listening out there. When we did marketing services years ago, before we went to coaching and consulting, like a lot of it was like helping them get better at their social media posting while we did work on the back end.
Right.
I had to create a guide. It was like a 6 point guide for taking great photos for social media. And like literally step one is clean the lens.
Clean off your camera. That's one of my biggest things.
I mean, it was, so when you said that, I was just laughing. I'm like, oh, he gets it. He gets it.
I do it between every single picture. And it's almost like a habit now. I'll pick up my phone, take a picture. Because, I mean, obviously with excavation, you got grease and dirt and all this. I'll take a picture, grab my shirt, wipe it off, take another picture. And it's almost like a habit now, but it makes a difference. And I'm telling you, it does. When my mom sends me a picture she takes, it's not the same. She's got the exact same phone.
Yeah. And then, take a lot of photos. What's the worst that happens? You just delete them.
Yes, exactly. And that's one thing. I go through and delete probably 90% of them, but those 10 or 12 pictures that I post, I think they're pretty good quality. You know what I mean? I can do it with an iPhone.
Right. Because the worst thing that you don't want to happen is you get home and like, oh, it's a terrible photo. And it's the only one you took.
Exactly. And I think that happens to a lot of people. They'll go through, and I can tell by their social media, but they'll go through and snap a picture here, snap a picture there. It's like, I know you didn't put any time into that. So it shows me that you're not putting, I shouldn't say that, but it reflects to me the outlook you have on your job too. If you can't put time into the finishing touches on the excavation work, I'm a big one on functionality. Obviously, you want everything to function the way it should and be structurally sound and all that, obviously. But I think finishing touches is what the customer sees. They don't care about putting a base layer down, a fabric, and whatever job you're on. They don't care about all that. They care what it looks like at the end. They're going to call you if it's not structural, but they want it to look good too. Your property is your biggest investment. So I think those finishing touches is huge, and documenting those finishing touches. I mean, if you can't document that, then.
Right. And then the last point I want to add, I think is probably the most crucial one. Mm-hmm. Maybe not behind cleaning your lens.
Yeah.
But nothing speaks better than a before and after photo.
I agree.
But you have to anchor something in that photo so that you can recognize it's the same property, the same view, the same something.
Exactly. It's funny you said that. I would do before and afters a lot, and I'd take a before, and I have an app where I can put the word before on it and after and this and that. But I went through and I was going through my page, and some of those before pictures were starting to look like jobs where you couldn't tell if that was the before or the after. So I went on a rant one night and just started deleting all the befores, which sometimes I regret it, but I want them to see the quality work at the end. And on Instagram, I have the before and afters, but sometimes I wish I would have kept the befores, but it kind of made my page look a little bit different than I wanted it to. So I kind of deleted those, which I don't know if I should have or not. But yeah, when I first posted, I always put a before picture. But then when somebody's going through, I mean, it's depending on what they're looking for. But
if you're taking a before photo, and let's just say you're doing a gravel driveway to keep it simple, and you're standing on the right side of the driveway and the house is off in the far upper left corner.
Right.
Mark that spot, because that's where you need to stand when you take your after photo, so that customers can say, oh shit, that's the same driveway, the same house. Look at the difference. How good is it?
Exactly. They don't want to.
You can't take the after when standing in front of the garage shooting towards the house, because they're like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Like, they don't even look like the same thing.
Property. Exactly. Right. They don't want to try to determine whether
you have to anchor that photo with a fixed something fixed in the photo.
I agree. And I think, to be honest with you, one of the biggest things, I'm big on small details. And I think all those small details, if you can focus on all those little small details, those add up to a large, it adds up to a larger goal that you're after. And it's all broken down into smaller details. And I think the small details, if you can't focus on those, you'll never be able to focus on the big picture.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
And when it comes to photos, like one of the small details I always tell people to do when they ask me for my advice is, where were you holding the phone for the before photo? At your chest, above your head, down by your feet? Because that's exactly where you need to hold the after photo.
You're exactly right. One thing I do I think some people have almost thought I have a drone. Probably crazier than hell when the customer looks outside the machine. I get on top of the machine, zoom out. I don't know if you've seen on your camera, you can zoom out, and I will get like an aerial shot of the property where they can see everything, clean lines. You can just see the whole project. And it almost gives you like an aerial shot to where you're like, yeah, it almost looks like a drone footage picture, but it's probably crazier than hell when they look outside it, but it's worked for me. And I tried to come up with a couple different ways to do it, but standing on top of the machine works for me every time. So
that's perfect, man. Yeah. I love
what you gotta do, I guess. Right.
Yeah. And let's be honest, nobody reads a word if whatever the image is or the video is doesn't grab their attention.
You're exactly right.
So it doesn't matter how well written your post is. if it's a company with a bad photo, the chance of getting people to actually stop and read it and see what you're offering is pretty low.
Exactly. You've got to grab their attention right off the bat.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. That's why I've never really ran many ads, but I see ads come up from all different areas all the time. And I see a photo and it's not the best quality photo, which I'm not judging anybody, but it's like you couldn't have put a more quality picture up here of, I mean, not saying that that's not their best work, but you've got to put a quality picture up there that shows what you do and what you provide and what type of company you are and what kind of work you provide. And that's the only thing the person that's seeing the ad sees. I mean, you've got to grab their attention and show them that picture has to explain 25 different things within a single picture or a single video or whatever you post. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we could talk marketing for days, especially social media, like posting.
Let me ask you one thing. Do you do a lot of marketing now, or have you steered more towards, you said, the consulting thing?
So we do a lot more of the business coaching and consulting, how to be a better business owner on the back end.
Okay.
Like, you guys are all great. Like, most guys are really good in the field.
Right.
Either they come from that background or they have that background from farming or whatever, but they get into business and like, they don't pick a niche.
The business side's a whole different,
a whole different animal.
It is. It definitely is.
But so I still have I still help people from time to time with some marketing stuff, but I usually try to refer them to some guys that I know.
Right.
Because it's labor intensive, it's time intensive. And for me, it's a distraction from growing the coaching consulting business.
Right. What you actually want to do.
And I had to learn the hard way when I was younger that not every opportunity is an opportunity. A majority of them are a distraction, and you got to say, no.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you've got to know where to steer those. Yeah. You got to be able to direct yourself through all those distractions and kind of know which ones are worth your time and which ones aren't, for sure.
Yeah.
But.
And I really think for companies like you, especially solo operators, getting a really, really, really good Google business profile, getting reviews, having even a basic website, because that's like your store.
Right.
You don't have a brick and mortar, right? It doesn't have to be all the bells and whistles, but it's just got to be clearly defined, a lot of questions answered, give them the information. Like those two things for your online side, then your social media post should be a blend of actual work and projects.
Right.
The good, the bad, the ugly, some lifestyle stuff.
Yep, I agree. And that's one thing I've been big on is we've got probably 30 plus reviews on Google and I think close to 20 or 25 on Facebook. And people want to know experiences firsthand. They don't want to hear from you and you tell them how good of a company you run and how good of work you do. They want to hear from other customers that have experienced that firsthand. And I try to ask, I'm not as good about it as I should be, but I try to ask most customers for a Google review. And just that one review people see that online. It's brought us to the top of, so we're located in Columbus, Indiana. And we've moved areas. I've moved here and there. I went to IU and I went to college at IU and we've kind of worked there a little bit and moved towards Columbus, but it moved us to the top of the Google listings. And my phone rings off the hook because of that. I mean, if you can be at the top, usually most of the reviewed ones are at the top. And I mean, that'll change your whole business.
Yeah. And it's free.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I've got a lot of videos that I have in our coaching program just on Google business profiles. And and then we have like videos on ways of getting more reviews to enticing customers to fill them out. Cause that stuff is free. And it works really, really good.
It does.
And then as far as, so, this has all been free, right? Google business profile, basic website. Because if you got to buy a domain, there's a website builder on GoDaddy, there's a website builder here. They're free. Your social media accounts are free.
Yep.
And like the only place that I say anyone starting out should spend some money and get some yard signs. And by yard signs, like you could have some that you put out to promote a service. But I really think having one in the yard while you're doing the work, and just put it in and take it with you.
Yep.
This project's being completed by, Creech Excavation and contractors.
Yep. And I think that's one thing. I decaled my truck. And I mean, we've got a F450 and it's a 4-door truck. And I've got a huge decal all over the side with my phone number on the back. I've got decals on both pieces of equipment, the trailer. And I mean, we wear company shirts, company hats. And I think that's huge. People want to know. I mean, you've got to represent yourself or nobody else is going to represent you. You know what I mean?
Yep. And then the last thing that I would buy if I was starting an excavation business or working in one right now, I'd go have a graphic designer make me some sort of a door hanger.
Yeah.
And every job that I did, I'd walk up and down the street and I'd hit 5 to 10 houses,
Right.
And if you're really good, you make the door hanger informing them that you're doing a project in their neighborhood.
Right.
If there's any issues on the street or whatever, please let us know. We'll attend to it right away. And you almost do it as a courtesy. So they're like, wow, these guys are really professional.
Right. Right. And I think it looks good and it speaks volumes about you too. And that's one thing that I've kind of struggled with here and there is especially not having guys work with me. And we've been fortunate enough where I've got so much work coming in, I can't hardly keep up. So I want to go out and advertise and market, and I'd love to run some Facebook ads and stuff like that. But I'm afraid if I go out and put door hangers on, I'm going to get so many calls about jobs and go look at jobs that they're going to want to. I mean, when a customer talks to you about a job, they want it done right away, and more often than not. And I mean, we're struggling to get to jobs now that have rolled over from the fall, and I'm afraid we get so many calls that coming in that I wouldn't be able to keep up with it. And then I'd be turning down work, and it's kind of a, I don't know.
It's a double-edged sword
situation. Yeah. It's hard.
Especially if you want to stay as a solopreneur. Like you don't need
that's what I'm not be afraid
30 jobs a month.
Exactly.
You need 10 good ones.
Exactly. And that's what we're in a good spot now. I think I'm comfortable with where we're at and happy with our setup. I'd love to grow, but I don't know. Now that we've got a little girl, I want to spend as much time as I can with her. And like I said, I'm pretty family oriented. So it's like, I don't want to be, I've been gone till 6 to 7 o'clock all week this week. And I get home, hang out with her a little bit, eat dinner, and then she's ready for bed. So it's like, I only get X amount of hours. And I told my wife, I'm like, you guys got to meet me for lunch.
You got to meet me for lunch.
Yeah. I got to see you during the day.
You need to have a conversation with your buddy Cole. The one we just did a podcast interview with him.
Right.
He's got some really cool boundaries that he's set to carve out time with his children. And
yes, I talked to him quite a bit. He's got twin boys, and I can't imagine having 2 little girls right now. It's just double everything. But yeah, he's a very family oriented guy as well. And I love Cole to death, man.
He takes him to estimates in the morning. He's just like, hey, this is my day and this is the only time it fits.
Yep.
And he's got this, like, if you don't like it, I don't care mentality. I won't do the job. And people, I think they respect that. They respect that. Like, hey, this is how we operate. This is my time. Funny. I don't take home calls after 6. And people are like, oh, I like that. There's structure.
You have to set those boundaries. You really do. It's funny you said that. I listened to the podcast that you did with Cole, and he had said something about taking his boys to look at jobs and it benefiting him. And I take my wife to quite a bit of jobs that I look at. And it's weird how it works, but it seems like the more jobs I take her to, the more jobs I win. And it almost makes you feel like a more family oriented and personable person. And it's just, I don't know, it gives people a different attitude and outlook on you. You're not just some guy flying by the seat of your pants. I mean, you've got a family at home, and I don't know, it gives people a whole different respect and perspective on you.
There's somebody out there listening to this right now that's got the thought like, I'm going to pay my niece $20 to ride with me to look at estimates in the night.
Exactly. See how many jobs I can win out of that, right?
I got my niece with me tonight.
I better win this one.
This one. Oh, that's hilarious, man. That's hilarious.
It is crazy how it works, though. It seems, I told her the other night after I listened, I said, why is it that when I take you to look at a job with me, it seems like I win more jobs than when I'm just by myself, which I don't know if it's true or not, but
yeah. I think there's something to be said too about your attitude and like your presence.
Absolutely.
If you go there alone and you're in a rush to get home, like you come off rushed.
Yes, you sure do.
You come off kind of hustled and you come off disheveled, and they're like,
yeah. How organized is this guy? I think first impression's huge. I mean, I tell everybody I do dirt work, but I do not like being dirty. And I try to dress, being clean cut and having clean clothes on. And everybody knows Jim Bob is going to show up in 3-day-old clothes with grease all over them and stuff like that. And I don't know. I think I judge people, and I shouldn't, but I judge people by the way they look. And I know most people do. And I think that first impression is huge. And I think, I don't know, being clean cut and go and look at jobs and caring about what you look like is.
I always say there's job site dirty, and then there's just dirty.
Yep, exactly.
Right. So if you got a little mud on your pants because you were working all day, and that's the only time you can do that's a big deal.
Yes.
If you haven't washed your pants, you've worn them 4 days in a row, there's a hole in the ass. That's a whole different dirty.
It is. And everybody, I agree completely.
And I always tell people all the time that, I'm like, best way to make a first impression is leave a clean shirt and a clean hat in your truck and only wear it to estimates. So even after you work all day, just put a different hat that doesn't have the sweat rigs on. Put a different shirt that isn't pitted out. Like
I've done it before. Sometimes I'll go work all day and come home. I'll jump in the shower, put different clothes on, and then go meet with the customer. I don't know. I'm kind of a clean freak, and my wife calls me OCD, but I don't know. You got to be particular about things. And if you don't care, then how does the customer expect you to care about the job that you're supposed to perform for them? That's just, I think like I said earlier, the little things trickle into bigger things, I think.
And the other side of that coin is if you are growing a team, you're setting the precedence of what's accepted by the rest of the team members. So if you don't care, your team will not care.
Exactly. I'm one. And I don't know if it's a huge thing, but I'll tuck my shirt in. I've got company shirts. I tuck it into my work pants. And the guy I had working for me last, he started to do the same thing, and I loved it. I'm like, it wears off on people. If you're clean, the way you operate wears off on people. And if you don't I always think that management, it all starts with management. If you can't set the tone at the top, how do you expect the people at the bottom to follow suit?
Right.
It's huge. But yeah, it speaks volumes. I mean, everybody's different, but yeah.
That's why I always laugh when those corporations do layoffs, and they always lay off like the factory worker or the guy that's low on the totem pole. And I'm like,
right.
They're just the cog in the wheel. You need to replace the transmission, which is management. And those people all stay there. And that's just a cycle. Bring them in, bring them out.
It's a never ending disaster. Yeah. It just keeps happening and keeps happening. But yeah, it seems like all of them do it. And the ones that actually make the operation move, the guys at the bottom, they want to get rid of them. And that's what, it just trickles down for sure.
Yeah.
It definitely does.
I got to ask real quick, is there anything that's on your mind or anything that you wanted to talk about today before we wrap up? I want to be, polite with my time with you. We've been on the call now for over an hour.
Yeah, I didn't even notice. It goes quick.
I know. I looked up. I'm like, whoa, it's been a good conversation.
I'm trying to think. Any advice that you would have for just a small outfit that's a couple years in business? I know you've been an entrepreneur for, you said over 15 years in a podcast I listened to. Is there any advice you have for somebody that's fairly new in business and that wants to continue to be an entrepreneur for a while?
Yeah. So you can't do it alone. Number one, I'm not saying to hire employees, but there's going to be a point where it's going to be advantageous to either hire a marketing company or a bookkeeper.
Okay.
We can all do QuickBooks, but you have to protect your time. I think the number one thing business owners do is we try to micromanage too much, especially at the beginning. Then what we end up doing is we end up doing $10 and $15 an hour tasks all day long.
Right.
So if you start getting too busy, you would be better off hiring a part-time office manager, admin,
right,
to help manage some phone calls, some emails, some billing, some, receipt labeling in QuickBooks.
So you can prioritize.
You would be shocked at how many more hours a week you have to focus on generating more revenue and providing great services to your customers.
Right. I think that's incredible advice. That's what my wife does. She's stay at home now. She's a real estate agent. We also own a property management business, and she was running the property management business. Now her mom's doing it. We've focused on cleaning a lot, residential and commercial cleaning, and she does a lot of our accounting and finances and stuff like that. But it's a hard task to juggle, and I think having that structure is huge. If you don't have that structure, which that's something I need to focus on more, but it's just, if you don't have all your ducks in a row, then it's hard to keep going and not stress out and think, because in entrepreneurship, as you're constantly thinking about something else. I'll be on a job and I'm like, well, did I do this with my accounting? Did I do this with my taxes? Did I do this, pay this bill? And I think having somebody to take a little bit of that weight off my shoulders would be huge for sure.
And there's a little side benefit to doing that too. Like once you get somebody in place and working functionally and you've set the parameters for different things.
Right.
So for instance, there's a reason I don't schedule my podcast interviews, because I would like, that's what works for you. Okay, I'll rearrange my schedule and get you in. Right.
Because you never get anything done.
Because we're personally vested in like, all right, I want to do this.
Right.
Kim has no personal interest in this actual podcast. So if I say, hey, I only want to do podcasts either on Tuesday or Thursday, and if you schedule one, I want to do 2 interviews that day, and that's it for the week. Because I want to block things together so I can, today's podcast day, let's just focus and be good at interviews.
Yes.
So she does that. So like, if you're like, hey, I can do Monday morning, she's like, that doesn't work in Ryan's schedule. How's Thursday at 3:00?
See, and you don't even have to bother with that.
I would have been like, let me rearrange some things and I'll fit you in on Monday. And then now everyone's running my life instead of me running my business.
See, I'm bad about that too. And it gives you structure, I think. I'm one that I always want to please everybody. And can you look at a job then? Yes, I'll make it work. And then I'm dragging myself out it takes a toll on the family too. I mean, I try to please everybody, and trying to do that, it'll exhaust you quicker than you can even imagine. And you can't hurdle too many balls at once. You know what I mean?
And another time-saving trick, especially for a solo operator, make a list of questions of information you want to get from every customer. Because if somebody calls you and says, hey, I got a driveway that needs repaired, can you take a look at it or give me a price on it? Your first answer is typically, yeah, I can come over, 3 days? I'm free?
Yep.
No. You should be asking questions. When's the last time you had any work done to it? Like, is there still gravel on the driveway? How big are the potholes in there? Like, how wide is the driveway?
Right.
Is there a special event or something coming up that you need it done by? And now you're gathering all that information so that you can actually sell them on their problem.
Right.
And you can protect your time. Like sometimes you're like, that's not a good fit for me right there with never having to drive to go look at it.
Right. Let me ask you this. I've heard you talk about this on several other podcasts as well. To weed out the tire kickers, I mean, as a previous sales guy and something like that, I don't have a lot of experience in sales. I can sell some jobs, but do you ask somebody, is it bad to ask somebody what their budget is? Because I have so many people that I can't tell you how many jobs I go look at and how many jobs I bid, and you will either never hear back from them or, hey, that's too much, or all the excuses that people feed you. But is it bad to ask somebody, hey, what's your budget for this job? Or is that crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed? Or
not at all. That should be part of your initial questions. And
because I feel like
there's different ways to ask that question though, right?
Right.
So if you say, hey, this is a 100-foot driveway and the gravel hasn't been put on 10 years and it's 12 foot wide and all that. And you can say, hey, before I drive out there, just to make sure that we're going to be on the same page, when you start getting into driveways that are 100 foot wide and 12 foot wide and 100 foot long,
right,
it's going to need material. We're going to be looking at a minimum of $1,500 to $2,000, and it could rise up to $3,000 to $3,500 depending on the base material and some other things.
Right.
Is that a budget range that you're comfortable with?
See, I think that's a really good way of wording it too, because sometimes, you get people, and when I'm going to have some work done, which I do a lot of it myself because I don't want to pay other people, which a lot of people do, I think, but I get on Google and Google, how much is this going to cost me? And do a little bit of research yourself, but it seems like the jobs I look at, I'll go out there and they have no idea how much is this going to cost, which I know the market's different, stuff changes, but just to get a baseline of let them know, hey, we're going to be right here with this, or this will give you a ballpark of where we're going to be. Is this something you can budget? Because sometimes it scares people. I think you start to ask them what their budget is. They're like, well, this guy's going to be way out of my ballpark.
Well, and that's the problem with the way you ask that question, right?
Right.
Because if you say, hey, what's your budget? They hear how much can I charge you?
And that's what they hear. That's a lot of
That's what they hear. So you have to find a different way of asking that same question. So what I find sometimes, like, let's be honest, you're on a phone call, you're doing work at a property you're getting paid on. You'd be like, hey, this type of work, it could range from $1,200 to $5,000, depending on what we find underground. Are you comfortable with that range before I make a trip and waste your time and mine? And always put them first, right? Like, I don't want to waste your time or mine.
No, I think that's a really good way of wording it too.
And there's just a lot of different ways of doing that. It's just,
I think that's a really good way of wording it. That's just something, especially in contracting specifically, pricing for me has been the hardest thing. Because you want to make money, like I said at the beginning. You don't want to be too low, don't want to be too high, and finding that median in between that you're making everybody happy is just tough. That's been the nice thing, part.
Right? And Chandler, the nice thing about having like a value-driven mindset for your estimates. And like, hey, listing out all the value for that particular project is if it does get into a price, like, hey, I can't afford that.
Right.
Now you don't have to discount your price. You can just remove value items. Well, we can change the scope of work to this, and that should fit in your budget.
Right. That's a really good point.
Like, you don't discount your value. You just, remove some of it.
Because when you start to cut into your value, it shows. I think it shows
that
a lot
you're really
about
not valuable. Like
exactly. It shows,
right.
It speaks volumes for sure, I think. But yeah.
Like there's always something in a project that they can do themselves, or you don't need to add into it, or
right.
you know, and you're like, well, if this is the budget, then we can do 1/3 of an acre this year and get you this and that. If you're in land clearing,
that's what we do that a lot, to be honest with you. I'll give them a price or bid a couple different jobs, and it's, hey, we could either do it all right now, we could do it in phases, whatever works for you and whatever's best for your budget. But I think being willing to work with the customer too is really beneficial.
And sure. If it really is something like that, a little tip that I always try to get guys to recognize, like, have them go do sales for you. Like, well, if you got any other neighbors or friends and family in the area that also need me some work done? Because my equipment's here, it's less expensive for this and that, and you're helping me fill my calendar. I can knock off X amount of dollars for you to get you into your budget range if we can find some other work in the area.
Right. We've done that too. And I think with excavation, it's so expensive just to get equipment there. It's like, hey, I've already got equipment here. We could do, which that also leads into, hey, can you do this for me? Well, I can't do it for free, but but I think, finding work and just being in the same area where somebody else is wanting work done. But that also steers you into, hey, I've got my uncle down the road that can come in and do it for $50 and you're at $1,500. And that doesn't sound very appealing to me, but
tell your uncle to have a great time.
Exactly. I don't want to work with you anyways.
Chandler, that's the other thing as a business owner. We get so worried about losing jobs. We don't, we don't realize that every customer is not our customer.
I agree.
Like those customers that want to nickel dick you down to the lowest price, they're also the ones going to call you 17 times when you're done.
I was just telling my wife
suck your time and energy.
Yep. I was just talking to my wife about that before she left when we were doing this podcast. It seems like the ones with the bigger projects that know they're going to spend the big amount of dollars, they're never the ones that are worried about getting the job done and bugging you about this and that. It's always the small little petty jobs, which I enjoy those too, but it's always the smaller, low dollar amount jobs that, hey, can you start next week? When are you going to be able to start? And they just question you and message you every day and this and that. It's like, I don't know. It's frustrating sometimes, but that's part of it.
Yeah, you're right. So it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
It's very much okay.
But when I first started, I wanted to get every single job, and I get disappointed when I lose them. Now it's like there's so much more work out there. I'm not going to lose any sleep over not winning this job. Whether it's a big opportunity that you think would change your whole business, or you can't. I always tell everybody you can't get rich off of one job. One job can really, really benefit you and set you up, but you can't get rich. Don't expect to get rich off of one job because that's just not how it works.
No. Now, we were working with the coaching program with a gentleman named Seth down in Kentucky, and I'm not kidding you. Like we had our session, and it was talking about customers, like you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Yes, I agree.
And in the next week when we had our call, he was just like, I took a job I shouldn't have this weekend, and I knew it the moment I took it. And all I could think about was what you were saying 3 days earlier. And I still couldn't tell the customer no. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I think I needed to do that though, because I learned my lesson, and it is okay to say no. And
that's
but to him, it's cemented the lesson. I'm like, good.
I've done that myself. It's like sometimes the dollar amount on the job is so significant that it's like, I can't pass up this job. Those 2 commercial jobs that I did, it's the dollar amount was so significant. I'm like, I think whatever issue we deal with or however difficult this customer is to deal with or the client, it'll be worth this dollar amount. And I kid you not, still to this day, it was not worth all the stress that I dealt with. I lost so much sleep over those 2 jobs. It's unbelievable. And it's like, now that I look back on it, I don't care how much they would have paid me. I would not deal with those customers again. If you could pay me to deal with them, and I wouldn't deal with them.
Right.
But you got to live and learn now. When you go to look at a job, you kind of know how the customer is going to be, and you can tell from the get go. And I get that gut feeling, and sometimes money talks to you, and you go against what your gut feeling is, and it bites you in the ass every time.
I'm telling you what, I was taught this numerous times throughout my life, and it's one of those lessons you have to learn on your own.
Right.
But your head and your gut are rarely in alignment.
Your
gut's never wrong, and your head is quick to talk you into why you should do something you shouldn't do. It's baffling how we self-sabotage ourselves.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
It definitely
then you
is.
really got to get good at trusting your gut because
yes, especially contracting. You got to know what kind of customers you're working for, and they can make your life hell for X amount of days or X amount of weeks, and you could have won 3 jobs that would be paying better, and the customers would be better to deal with. And it's just, you got to know what you're dealing with and how to react to them and what decisions to make on those customers. Because sometimes it's not worth it.
I mean, you hear horror stories about guys get hired to do rough and final grading for contractors, and they know the contractor's shady.
Right.
But they're like, it's just so many lots, and the amount of money and the work is so consistent.
The opportunity seems too good. Yeah,
he'll pay me. I'm not worried about that. And they know in their gut that you're not the first guy he hasn't paid.
You're exactly right. And there's a reason he can't find anybody to do the work. And
right.
I tell my wife, I said, if it sounds too good to be true, more often than not, it is too good to be true, because it's sometimes, like I said, it's not worth the headache. It's just not. But
yeah, we do that. We do a guarantee in the coaching program. Like, hey, after 90 days, if you don't have these benchmarks set with your business and you've done the work, I'll give you all your money back. And they're like, and I'm like, so I actually have to fight with people who say, no, it actually is a real guarantee. Like, it's
right.
Because people are like, that sounds too good to be true. Like, you're going to give all your money back. And I'm like, if I didn't make you a better business person, I don't deserve your money.
Yep. I agree. And it's hard for people to believe sometimes, but
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And usually after 1 or 2 calls, they're like, no, I'm glad I made this decision. So
it changes them.
It's like when you find a good contractor, like, oh, I'm really glad I hired him. And like, that's my guy.
Yes. And it seems like in this industry, people do it all the time. It's like, once they get their hands on you, they want to keep you and wrap around you, and they don't want to lose track of it, because it's hard to find good contractors nowadays that you can trust and that are reliable and reasonable priced. And it's tough. Then they want you to stick there for a couple months at a time. It's like, I've got other work to get to. I got other things to do. I can't just stick around for a couple of months, but
absolutely, man. Oh, this has been a great conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed. I mean, I have to call Cole and thank him for making sure that we got introduced together and did this.
Absolutely. I can't thank you enough for having me on. It was weird. I listened to your podcast probably. When did you start doing the podcast?
I think we started doing the podcast in November of 22, if I'm correct in my head.
Okay. I was going to say, I know it was over a year ago that I listened to it, and I listened to it here and there, and I actually played it. I try to listen to podcasts on long drives, and I played it. My wife's like, that voice sounds familiar. And I was like, yeah, this is a podcast I'm going to be on. She's like, there's no way you've listened to this before. And it's just funny how things transpire. And Cole got on, and he's good about social media. He's got a YouTube channel. Believe it or not, I just got a tripod off the TikTok shop. My wife's like, you better start a YouTube channel. So I recorded myself doing a little bit of maintenance, and I recorded a little bit on the last job we were on this week. But I'm going to step out of my comfort zone a little bit, start to put some YouTube videos together, and start to do the social media thing a little bit more. But I can't thank you enough for having me on.
If you do it consistently for a year, you'll look back at that first video and go, God, that was awful. But you have to have the awful to get, you've got to start at terrible to get to good.
Exactly. I agree. It's been great talking with you though, man.
You too, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. So anything that we can do for you on Skid Steer Nation, and please know we're here to help and assist you. And
absolutely. I'm going to go check your website out for sure.
Awesome, man. And for everyone out there listening, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and share it. That's all we ask of you. We don't bring in any paid advertisers to produce this. We do it all in-house ourselves, just to provide you guys with great content and little nuggets to make you better business owners. So with that, I will plug my own business though. So we've been talking about the coaching here and there throughout that episode. So if you guys are in an area of your business, you just feel like you're at a glass ceiling and you want to break through it, or you feel kind of lost, you're not sure where you're going, head over to groundbreakinggrowth.com. That's groundbreakinggrowth.com. You can see exactly kind of my philosophy and how I like to structure and build a business from the ground up. It all starts with your values, because that's the cornerstone of who you are. And we go from there, and we will make you a better business person. So schedule a time. You'll speak with me directly, nobody else, and we'll see if we can't get you to where you want to go and meet your goals. So until next week, guys, be good.